I just want to make this video. Um, I don't have a script. I don't have anything planned. Even more low effort than normal. Just because I feel like I'm going insane and I'm a little bit hopeless right now. I feel like I need to get some things out and off my chest. Um, in terms of like political stuff. So, and I guess how it relates to religion, but just I don't know, just our society and culture in general. There's so many things wrong with it on such fundamental structural levels that I just feel absolutely hopeless. I sometimes think I just wish a comet would come and destroy the United States. And I have a really hard time loving my fellow Americans like Jesus would. Like Jesus loves all people. I don't understand how to have that divine love when we're just so ugly. We're just ugly. We're an ugly country. We're ugly people. And I don't mean that in a physical sense. I mean that in a moral and spiritual sense, a sense of character. We're just ugly. So the Trump administration comes in and the first day does a bunch of crap, cuts federal spending in the name of efficiency. Elon Musk has illegal, unconstitutional power, whatever. I'm not even going to touch on some of that. But the point is that Elon Musk got to this position not just through his business ventures, but by being an edge lord online and getting a bunch of people to think he was really smart and cool when he hasn't done a thing in his life, right? And then have money to invest from his parents and make a couple investment decisions, but he runs companies into the ground. He was kicked out previously of PayPal anyway. He has not done a good job at Tesla. He doesn't design anything at Tesla. At most, he's an investor and a CEO and an idea man who has stupid ideas and then forces people to make them. But he's not an actual engineer. He doesn't do anything. He never has. He's just a money guy that has some semi-interesting ideas, but people idolized him. And until like 6 months ago or so, when I talk to even people that I agree with on a lot of stuff, they'd all be like, yeah, I don't like Elon Musk, but he's really smart. He's really smart. Yeah, that's just the first case study. He's not smart. He's an idiot. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't have any intellectual background. He's not well rounded. He's just a loser. He's a loser. I mean, it actually came out that like, yeah, it looks like he cheated at video games, right? He's just a loser. He's pathetic. And now people are seeing it, but it took years for people to see it. And they idolized him and thought he was so cool and got him to a point where he's like a public figure, not just some rich guy living in obscurity, right? It's the same thing with people like Jordan Peterson, although he doesn't obviously have this sort of influence. Like he's not the co-president right now, and he's not super rich. But the other that's just an example of how anti-intellectual and how easy it is to impress the American public and American people. You don't have to be smart. You don't actually have to do anything or know anything. You just have to project confidence, and you have to project intelligence. But it's you can deceive the American people really easily because a lot of us, especially as time goes on, are functionally illiterate. We don't read anything. We don't understand anything. The most we do is listen to podcasts. We have no sense of history, no sense of culture, no real values. We're just very stupid people, a very stupid country and culture. We take people like Dr. Phil and Oprah seriously, or Dr. Oz, So much so that now Dr. Phil, as a big Trump supporter, is embedded with ICE in Chicago doing some of the Chicago raids and streaming it, has been allowed to stream and make a TV show on the streaming service, on his streaming service, about the ICE raids where it's like Cops, right? Hosted by Dr. Phil. And just that's even possible is laughable. Dr. Phil's always been an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not. You look into his background, it's like, yeah, he might have a doctorate, but he's not not a very good therapist or counselor. A lot of the people that he's worked with end up getting worse. He pushes rehab programs that are like private scams and money generators, right? But the point here is that it's another figure like Elon Musk. It's really easy to dupe the American public who are glued to their TVs and phones into liking somebody and thinking they're cool. And now we're watching it's not just the border being secured or immigration being reformed or finding people who are undocumented, forcing them to get documented. It's raids where thousands of people are being rounded up and arrested and deported. And from the news articles I've looked at, it's like half or more of them have no criminal background at all, right? Have not even been deported before. And the American people, like the swine we are, a certain segment of us think that's awesome and defend it, but not just that. We want to actively watch it on TV. We want to pay for the Dr. Phil streaming service and watch this show as if it's entertainment and not as if it's something analogous to the Gestapo hunting for Jews, right? Not as if it's a softer version of that might be leading that way anyway. And it's just thinking about that and how just stupid the American people are. Like, sorry, like we just have we have a terrible education system at all levels. We have a culture, a popular culture that is almost AI generated to the point where it just creates content that will generate money and has no actual thought or soul to it. It doesn't challenge people in any way. And we idolize and promote these figures like Elon Musk or Dr. Phil that end up getting into positions of power, like in the government, as we're doing these terrible things. And like, it's fascistic and evil, but at the same time, it's so absurd because it's like, yeah, Dr. Phil is streaming the ICE raids and talking to some of the people. And it's like, and people want to watch that. People will pay for that. Like all the books about dystopian fascism and Big Brother, like 1984, Fahrenheit 451, all those books were stupid and wrong in hindsight. They were really dumb. I've never been a huge fan of those books, not as piece of art, but just politically, because it made the control of the masses into something so much more interesting and elegant and subtle than it really is. You don't have to have Big Brother and like ministries of a thought, like thought policing you. You don't have to have a centralized media apparatus that tricks people and feeds them misinformation or disinformation. You just need to create a bunch of hedonists. You need to take all religion and all spirituality and everything in life and make it about generating money and material items and also pleasure. And you just need to make that the core part of your culture is materialism, the generation of wealth, and branding. And then the people are so stupid and slavish that they basically, you don't need something like Big Brother. You don't need governments burning books. People are just so stupid that they're easily controllable anyway. And it just makes me disgusted. And it also just makes me feel hopeless because it doesn't matter if you're a conservative or like a moderate liberal or even like on the left in terms of like a socialist, maybe, right? But a socialist who doesn't really read and who doesn't really actually think much about it, you just found it out on the internet. You watch like Hassan Piker and that's it. Like, you're not actually thinking. You're not free. You're a slave to whatever subcurrents of pop culture, whatever subcultures are being marketed towards you with the algorithms, and you'll never break out of that. And it's very hard to have any sort of opposition movement that you can rely on when you can't appeal to people actually thinking things through and making a rational decision. People are like sheep, and you have to yourself become a charismatic leader that kind of tricks them into doing what they want. But there's no actual equality there. There's no actual ability to talk to the American people as if they were anything but giant hedonistic swine and babies. You have to re-educate them and spiritually form them and change their character in such a way to get them to that point that to actually think about a labor movement or a socialist movement or a left-leaning movement that can kind of be big tent as an opposition to what we see going on with the right wing in this country. I just don't have any hope because the average person, even the people who are more politically aligned with me, they're not politically aligned with me because they're reliable thinkers that I can unify with and rely on. It's almost by chance, right? There's very few people who it's by anything other than chance that you could rely on them. And that's kind of a point that a lot of other YouTubers like Irami Osai Frimpong has made. Like, if you want real stable change, it has to be a moral and intellectual revolution and change that happens in the heart. We need to infiltrate institutions that raise up generations of people that are different. It can't purely be something from the top down. It has to be grown from the bottom up too. And I completely agree with that, but I just have very little hope because our education system sucks. And it's not just the problem of administrators. It's not just the problem of universities and schools treating things like businesses. It's not just the problem of overfunding. Those are all problems. It's also that teachers are stupid. It's also that teachers don't really care about their jobs at all level. It's also that teachers are underpaid and overworked. And so even if they want to care about their jobs, they burn out. But it's also just the quality of teacher training in this country is absolutely abysmal. So we can't even get a foothold in the schools, which most people pass through, to create more engaged citizens that can be, free thinkers. And I don't mean free thinker in like being a new atheist or just being edgy and reactionary. I mean being a free thinker in that you're liberated from your slavish reliance on social media and you have a broader historical context and moral context for understanding the world, right? So I just feel hopeless about that. I just feel like we're so stupid and it's only getting worse as I've worked in lower levels of education, higher education. I see the standards going down, down, and down, student abilities going down, down, down. I see, my fellow adjuncts, they're going down, down, down in terms of their quality and what they actually give back to their students. And it just feels like it's hopeless for that reason. Okay, moving on from the American culture and people are kind of stupid and hopeless. The other thing is I'm just extremely discouraged by what I'm seeing with Christianity. So in particular, I've been arguing with some people about this, but it's really upset and disgusted me. But the J.D. Vance thing talking about immigration and ordo amoris, which is the order of your affection or love. The very basic idea is something super common sense in most ethical systems. It's a pragmatic thing where you basically just, yeah, we are limited and finite and not capable of loving people perfectly. And so, and we don't have enough resources. So when resources come in, we kind of have to triage, right? if I have a choice, I'm in a hospital and I can only save my wife or another woman almost exactly like my wife, and I have to choose between one of them, it would be kind of messed up for me not to choose my wife, right? So there's an instance, right? Classic little thought experiment of how in certain situations your proximity and relationship to a person can actually change your moral obligation. Like it's probably better for you to save your wife in that circumstance. I don't actually buy that argument completely, but that's an illustration. The other thing would be if there's limited resources, it's like triaging, right? The famous thing about lifeboat ethics, that debate between Hardin and Singer. If you got limited resources on the boat, you want to keep the people on the boat that were on the boat first. You want to keep them on the boat, and you've got to force, like, you got to keep other people from coming on, or the rest of the people are going to sink and die, right? Or they're going to take the food on the boat, and then everybody's going to die. So there kind of has to be this triaging effect, and that's a pragmatic, practical limitation on our ethics because we just don't always have abundant resources that we can spread around perfectly, and we also we have limited time and energy and don't have the ability to love everybody as we would like to ideally. But the ideal is always that if you could help people, if you could love everybody infinitely, then you should do it. That's a Christian duty. It's just a pragmatic limitation. And J.D. Vance, in the context of these deportation things, has the balls to quote St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, a Catholic tradition, and say that, well, we have to care for the American people first over immigrants, and it's not really that big of a deal. Like, it's not something radical to say that we need to care for Americans first. Here's the precedent in St. Augustine, Ordo Amoris. And the thing about that is it's just a completely cynical, disgusting appeal on so many levels. First, there's a difference between securing borders and saying we have finite resources, we're not going to let anyone else in, and if you are in already, you need to become documented and start paying your fair share of taxes. I'll get back to that in a second, right? It's another thing to say we should spend a bunch of government money and resources to round these people up, even if they're not criminals, and ship them out on military planes and potentially put them in Guantanamo Bay as a concentration camp. Okay? There's a difference between triaging resources and actively spending resources to go target people and take them out. So one, it's just a complete mischaracterization of the situation. But two, it assumes that the interests and caring for undocumented immigrants is in stark tension with the interests of the American people, and we have to care for the American people first, the citizens first. That's just not true. The right has lied about Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs, and I've even seen some right-wing influencers talking about them doing voodoo. They've just made that stuff up. It's all lies, right? Demonizing that there's a bunch of criminals in the immigrants. Again, there's some criminals just like in any population, but it's not the people they're deporting, right? Or it's a small percentage of the people they're deporting are violent criminals. We need to get out of here, right? But they've basically conjured this myth and convinced people through their evil media arms like Fox News that immigrants and the interests of immigrants are actively contrary to the interests of the American people, and that's not true. And also, like, they're sponging off our tax dollars and stuff. And it's not true. Undocumented immigrants pay tons of taxes and get few of the benefits. Yes, they sponge off the hospital system. Hospitals are mostly privatized. Okay? Unfortunately, they're not taking government money in that way, right? They are paying into the system, and they're not getting Social Security or other things in the end. And they're also taking really low wage jobs and working a bunch of jobs that keep the economy and like supply line of food going. They are not, their interests are not contrary to our economic or national interests or the standard of living of the American people. In fact, they're contributing to it. So it's the whole thing of having to triage with ordo amoris is based on a false premise anyway. It's based on two false premises. It's one, it's a mischaracterization of we're trying to triage how to care for people. No, the situation, again, like I said earlier, is not how do we care for people and spread finite resources around. It's should we round up a bunch of people in police raids and SWAT style raids and take them and their children or them from their children and put them in detention centers and concentration camps and send them back to wherever they came from with no concern for their well-being or their life history or their relationships to people in the United States. Right? It's not about triaging care and spreading resources. It's about actively going after people. And then the second thing is it's based on a false assumption that caring for immigrants is somehow in tension with caring for Americans. It's not. We have so many resources. But the other thing about that is that even if allowing undocumented immigrants to stay and offering them a pathway to legal citizenship and full membership in our nation, even if that was contrary to the current standard of living of American citizens, we should still allow them to do that, probably, because the standard of living that American citizens have is unchristian and evil. We have way too much crap. We have way overabundance for the average person, even people with lower income. And if they were to somehow slightly threaten our standard of living, the Christian way would just be, okay, yeah, my standard of living was too high. I should divest myself of this wealth and give it to people who need it. Again, this is a false premise. That's not necessary. But that it's not even necessary, and still Americans are so selfish and greedy and corpulent and indulgent in material stuff, including myself, that they feel that's threatened by people who don't actually need their money, who don't actually take anything from it, in fact help their society function and help them get food. It's absolutely disgusting, and I've seen so many Christians defending this, right? It's disgusting. So the whole ordo amoris, I'm seeing so many Christian YouTubers that I previously kind of liked now reacting and siding with Vance or being, well, it's nuanced. Well, it's nuanced. No, it's not. It's not nuanced. Shut up. I just am disgusted by you all. I'm disgusted by Christian YouTubers, even the ones that I've liked previously. You disgust me. So many of you deserve to go to purgatory, like myself, and you're going to have so much burned out of you. Because this insistence on nuance, that we have to look at all these things with nuance. It's pretty clear. Like, it doesn't take more than 5 minutes of Googling to see that the stats, as far as anybody could tell, is that they're not just deporting violent criminals. They're mostly deporting just normal people who are undocumented, don't have the right paperwork. And then everything else I've said, buying into all these lies that fueled these narratives. It's evil, it's demonic, it's satanic. And I've started to believe in demons. I've started to believe again that the devil is real. As I've seen more and more of this. And it just makes me think that so many supposed Christians in the United States are actually just serving the devil and are being influenced, misled by the devil, and our nation is like demonically possessed. We're playing right into the hands of people who want to cause, of spiritual beings who want to cause suffering and mayhem and confusion, right? The platforming of people who are wingers by some of these supposedly moderate and reasonable Christian YouTubers like Ross Do That and Rod Dreher, that they're getting platformed now because they're talking about a return to religion and re-enchantment. Well, guess what? I'm all for those things, but I'm also not writing a bunch of articles calling trans people monsters, talking about the mangled genitals of trans people like Rod Dreher is. Being completely credulous about demonic possession, where it sounds like there's cases of mental illness like Rod Dreher is. I'm also not writing a bunch of articles like Ross, do that, however you say his last name, arguing basically that Pope Francis is too liberal and he's dividing the Catholic Church because he's too liberal and he doesn't get it, right? He doesn't get what us American Catholics see so clearly. Maybe he should just stay in his lane, Mr. Pope. Um, all right, just platforming of these people who are apologists for Trump, apologists for the right wing politics, and try to combine it with Christianity is disgusting to me. It's absolutely repulsive and disgusting. And I have found myself with no qualms anymore passing judgment on people and just saying, you know what, I'm personally a universalist, so I think everybody will be saved in the end, but I sure as hell believe in hell as a sort of purgatory that maybe it's instantaneous, maybe it goes for a long time. I don't know. But um I have no qualms telling people, like the Bible tells people now, like, your political opinions are rooted in vices and in ways of feeling and thinking about other people in the world that you will need to serve genuine time in hell for and be punished and purged of. Because the way that Christians, especially evangelical and Protestant Christians and Catholic converts in this country, think is demonic, is evil, is unchristian, that anybody could seriously argue like J.D. Vance argues, that anybody could buy into his rhetoric, is just, they're either stupid sheep that are easily deluded, or they're angry, hateful people who feel aggrieved and want to take that out on other people. And or a mix of the two. And I just the churches that still have any integrity, I feel like really need to stand up and start punishing their flock. Start disciplining their flock. Because this type of stuff is absolutely disgusting, right? I don't believe in separation of church and state. I don't believe that politics and religion or anything like that can be kept separate. And so I think that the Christian political leaders really need to be reprimanding people. Like, it's amazing that the Pope doesn't call out J.D. Vance and do anything more than just being like, I don't like it. By the way, I'm just ranting now about that. So I just think that the public capturing, even by the vice president, of Christianity and Christian symbolism, and sort of the online and cultural echo chambers and subcultures that fuel that, like right wing Catholic converts and right wing Protestant groups, and also people who love Jordan Peterson, right? And have followed him into his weird flirtations with Eastern Orthodoxy. Um, I think that whole system of reinforcement, that whole series of rabbit holes that reinforce the kind of aggrievement Christianity and aggrievement subculture, is just disgusting and unchristian, and I would like to see it actually eradicated and punished by the church. But unfortunately, I don't think the institutional churches will do much of anything. And I'm sick of seeing Rod Dreher and Ross Duhat and other people platformed and taken as reasonable people. Everybody should just be ashamed. And I have very little respect for the people platforming any of them now. Oh, they're writing about beauty. They're writing about the need for God. Oh, they're writing about how we need to re-enchant the world so they're our allies. No, they're not. Because their re-enchantment of the world is a nice little thing that helps them feel better, helps them not be nihilists and reductivists, but they don't actually have love in their hearts, right? You shouldn't be getting spiritual advice from any of these people. They don't have love in their heart. They don't know the first thing about love. And if they don't know the first thing about love, they don't know the first thing about Christianity or Christ. And I'm comfortable saying that. If you don't have love, you are not a Christian. If you don't have genuine love working in you, you are not a Christian. If your paradigm of Christianity and following Jesus is not centered around the love Jesus has for all of creation and all people, from the most angelic being to the worst depraved sinner, including Satan, right? If you don't think that, if you don't see the world through the eyes of love in that way, then you don't have the beginnings of the Holy Spirit working in you, and you are not a Christian. You are a Christian in name only. You are a Christian in a sociological sense. You are a Christian in terms of the type of institutions you go to, but you are not actually a follower of Christ. And I am just paraphrasing what Paul says. Even if you work miracles and have spiritual gifts and you prophesy, you heal, you speak in tongues, and you don't have love, Paul literally just says it doesn't matter. You're not actually one of us. Love is the prerequisite. Love is the first seed. And perfect love, like I started this video out saying, I don't have perfect love, right? I don't want to make this as if I'm saying I'm better than everybody. But if you don't have the seed of love that over your lifetime is growing, and the Holy Spirit's working in you in that way, then you are not a Christian. You do not have Christ in you. That is straight from the Bible. This whole subculture of online Catholic and Christian apologists who are more concerned with fighting battles between my side, your side, pro-Catholic, anti-Catholic stuff, who are more concerned with debating, who are more concerned with reactionary politics, it really makes it seem like you guys don't have love and you're not actually interested in being a real Christian. Sorry. Go to hell. So I feel hopeless on the one hand, to sum up the two sections of this rant I'm talking about. I feel hopeless on the one hand that the American people are either sheep that are so stupid and anti-intellectual that they're just duped all the time, and then you can't help them, or that they are angry people who feel aggrieved all the time. And this isn't just on the right. This is also liberals and some people on the left. That their entire worldview operates from feeling like a victim and feeling aggrieved, and they're just reacting. They're not actually free to learn and consider anything, right? So that makes me feel hopeless. Number two is that what I was just talking about is that Christianity, which is supposed to be the force of love and also the force of perfecting mankind and spiritually developing and evolving mankind intellectually and morally, okay, is being publicly co-opted and has been publicly co-opted by terrible people who are doing terrible things and justifying their terrible things with these supposed theological concepts in name only. But then also that the people who aren't so terrible, who are really genuinely doing their best on YouTube or whatever, end up platforming some of those people and don't have the discernment to see through it. And so now the public face of Christianity more than ever is just not able to reach the sheep who are duped and at least lead them in the right direction, even if you're still somewhat duping them. And it's also not helping them transcend from the level of sheep that need to be duped and led. Okay, it's not freeing people. So I just feel hopeless because the culture sucks and people aren't free in their hearts and minds. So you can't really unify with them or help them or create a movement. And then the supposed force for doing that, Christianity, is at an institutional and cultural level actually reinforcing the opposite. Um, so I feel hopeless. Okay, switching to the third and maybe the final part of this. I don't know. I just really want to turn on the camera and just rant because I have so many thoughts. But um, the last thing, I guess, tentative last thing is that on the left, again, when I say the left, it's such a stupid term because it's so vague and everybody uses it in different ways. I consider when I say I'm a leftist, it's because I have a economic and moral vision of what the government is for, and certain changes to how we live our lives, spend our time, that I think would help encourage the flourishing of human beings. So I think giving everybody access when we have the resources to basic medical care, right? And taking that survival pressure off of them frees them up to have more time to learn about and pursue God, to develop, right? So I come at socialism from a specifically Christian point of view, where I think the best way to help people, encourage people to get closer to God, is to free them from a bunch of the constraints that keep them distracted and to show them a better way. And I think a socialistic system would do something like that. Other people can be well-informed socialists or communists or whatever and have a similar point of view without the God stuff, right? But the point I'm making is that I have a somewhat of a vision for how society could be better, for how our lives could be better, that has to do with the economic conditions and the way people relate to bosses and working, that has to do with the function of the government being for the promotion of human flourishing, that has to do with mankind respecting nature and valuing the interconnections they have with nature and all of the people across the globe, that produces and that produces from the top down and from the bottom up great cultural products and art and artistic movements, and fosters that has a good strong education system that's highly regulated, that doesn't let corporations become quasi governments that own everything, right? And have basically paramilitary groups working within them, that doesn't and that gives power, frees people from the constraints of the system of just living in individualized nature, where we're going to get eaten by the lion or starve to death all the time. Frees people from those distractions to let them ponder higher things, to make it possible for them to develop in higher ways and transcend their stupidity and finiteness, right? And pursue God, but also prevents abuses of freedom like corporations and employers imposing harsh restrictions on you, right? Making you spend your whole life working in certain ways in bad conditions. Okay, I've thought about this stuff. I think about how it integrates into my faith. I think about how even if somebody's not of my faith, as long as they value human flourishing and human well-being, right, I could argue them to the same conclusion. And I really think about it, and that's what I would consider a leftist, is someone like me, is someone who's thought through these things and actually has somewhat of a vision for changing and restructuring the economy and how we live our daily lives and how we relate to each other and how we relate to government and what the purpose of government is. I don't consider a leftist someone who's like, I voted for Obama, I like Obama, I'm pro-gay marriage, I'm pro-trans rights. Okay, that's not a leftist. That's just somebody who is being fed stuff from the algorithm, and they might be coming to some of the right conclusions, but they're not actually thinking through and have a better vision of the world. I think of those as I would call them like just liberals or socially liberal. The labels don't matter. But anyway, My point is, in this third and maybe last section, is that among most people who I agree with politically are not like me, and they don't have that vision, and they're highly reactionary, as I said earlier. And they are so closed off to any finding common ground with people who are religious or have different points of views on things that they are openly hostile to thinking in different ways, even ways that result in the same voting and vision of the world as they have. If you get to it in a different way than they have, you're shut down, right? They don't like it. I mean, one popular thing is talking about like trans rights and being a trans ally or whatever. It is completely possible for somebody to have a very nuanced view on what's going on metaphysically, morally, psychologically with trans issues, and maybe be a little bit outside of the liberal consensus and still stand up and say trans rights are human rights. I don't go around misgendering people. I don't think you should either, intentionally, because it's just stirring up pain and controversy, right? We should. I don't know how we would do this because so much of what's in the mainstream is thought policing and not actual policy proposals. But we should get it so that violence against trans women is reduced and punished and investigated by the police in better ways. And we should foster a culture where every human being is valued as inherently valuable and lovable, and that's the basis of toleration amid disagreement, is the fundamental dignity and value of human life. And I would say that also extends to the life of all creatures, right? I don't have to make a case for that based on any understanding of like what's actually going on with trans ideology and what gender and sex are, and to come to any conclusions about any of that. That's something that I can argue for. The idea of respecting trans people and trans rights is something I can argue for independently of theorizing and speculating about what's going on at deeper levels with this stuff, and whether I condone or we should normalize these alternative gender expressions, right? But frankly, at the popular level, there's no room for someone like me who would want to be considered an ally, and who would who I'm scared for LGBTQ people. I'm not really scared for LGBTQ people as a whole spectrum under Trump. I don't think we're past the point where anybody cares about just being gay, right? Just we've had a paradigm shift with gay marriage stuff. At least most of us have. But I'm scared for like trans kids. I'm scared for mental health access being shut down, because no matter what you think about these things, like people who have a tendency to be trans also have a tendency towards mental illness. And I'm not saying causality one way or another, but if you are going against the grain of society, it's going to cause anxiety, right? If you're going against the grain of society, it's going to cause anxiety. It's going to cause depression. And the more our society demonizes you and does not treat you like a full human being, the worse that mental health stuff is going to get. So at the very least, they need access to mental health care, right? To work things out. But apparently, even that is being shut down. Look at the bill proposed in Oklahoma to shut down the Oklahoma State Department of Mental Health, right? And it's mostly based on trans stuff, right? So what I'm saying is that if I wanted to unify with and make a movement to help protect people and to help try to usher in a different society and a better world and a better society, for the vast majority of people I've met who are liberals or on the left, wouldn't want me there, because I don't necessarily think that it's not even that I necessarily have an opinion on what's going on with gender stuff. It's that I don't buy the commonly accepted theories about like gender. It's all gender dysphoria, and it's basically a medical condition that needs to be treated by transitioning. I don't buy the stuff about recommending puberty blockers. I don't buy the whole paradigm of technological interventions and that people, in order to be happy, have to rely on technological interventions to change their outward expressions, right? Um, and I have a lot of detailed thoughts I could talk about in another video about like how screwed up our gender roles in the United States and the West are, so that they produce a lot of cognitive dissonance and psychological pain for people, and that it's just like an unnecessary strain on people that I think a lot of gender stuff would calm down if we didn't have such rigid gender roles, right? And I could make a theological case for that type of stuff too, that you know, a lot of the Eastern fathers, like the Cappadocian fathers, didn't really think that a gender was something that innately defined who you were, and that it was a temporary state. And that it's not going to matter anyway in a few moments when you die and in the resurrection, right? Um, but yeah, but any sort of nuance in that, I just feel like the average liberal wouldn't want to be around me and wouldn't trust me, um, and is just completely closed off to thinking in any sort of deeper or different way about any of these things, even if they come to the same policy conclusions and want the same things in terms of votes and what we actually have in this country in terms of protections, right? So, um, and so that's just one instance of how Christianity and religion, or just thinking in ways that aren't purely materialist and hedonistic and utilitarian, thinking in ways that's not just about people being happy in a shallow sense of happy, and doing whatever they want, basically a libertarian sense of live and let live, thinking in ways other than that and wanting to call people to other ways of thinking and seeing the world, puts you at odds with most of the people who I politically agree with. Because, like I was saying, most people I politically agree with are just closed-minded dogmatists, just like the QAnon people. And yeah, that's another thing that makes me hopeless. And a subsection of that is that religion and Christianity in particular has a bad name, in part because of the failures of Christianity and the bad things we've done, Christians have done. Like, I mean, like I've been talking about this video, the public face of Christianity is disgusting in a lot of cases. And so I completely understand that, and I think that's a valid feeling. But I also think that it's possible to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that when we talk about Christianity like that, we talk about it in ways that aren't, we don't apply the same level of scrutiny to other religions, right? In pop culture, even though there's bad things that happen in all religions and in all political systems, there's bad things that happen. But so I'm just saying, I feel hopeless for, you know, a lot of different reasons. I feel hopeless because the American people are stupid, and so you can't rely on them. And then even when they're not stupid, there's no mechanisms to help them get less stupid, so you can rely on them. And then the public face of Christianity is being co-opted even more so than I've seen within my lifetime by the right, even by naive, well-intended people, and influencers, right? Thought leaders. And then the last thing was even the people I politically agree with, I can't really unify with, not because I don't want to unify with them, but because I feel like they don't want to unify with me. And I just feel completely hopeless because I turn to people at my church. I try to talk to people at church and I get some sympathetic ears, but I'm mostly alone pushing back against Christian in all denominations. I'm mostly alone pushing against Christian right wingers, and I can use some help. But the people who agree with me in general, even if they're Christian, they typically just want to be dogmatic about everything, and it's hard. They don't actually want to help me. They just will cut and run and leave the institutions and not try to convince other people or start anything or start organizing or start any sort of movement or unifying. So I feel hopeless. I feel surrounded by idiots. I feel surrounded by people who are angry at all of the wrong things instead of being angry at the rich and powerful and uber powerful corporations and a government that's abusive. They're vilifying, immigrants or liberals or whatever. Yeah, I just feel completely alone. I feel like I'm going insane. And then it's like even the Christians who I agree with, I like their YouTube videos, are all just platforming these right wing assholes. And yeah, I feel so alone, and I'm not just complaining about the psychological toll on myself, which I can complain about, and I often do, of feeling lonely like that. I'm complaining because if I'm alone and I can't unify with anybody, then I don't know how to help people. I know a couple people I give money to that I pray for. If an undocumented immigrant needed to hide in my house, I would let them hide in my apartment, right? But if I can't unify with people, I don't know how I can actually make a difference. And if I didn't have a kid, if I didn't have family, like maybe I'd just go self-immolate and make a point, right? But I can't do that, and I don't know any other ways to do it, and I just get angrier and angrier at everybody. Um, I just feel so hopeless and disgusted, and like there's no path forward. I don't really know what to do. Um, I haven't even talked about the "my heart goes out to you" Nazi salute crap. I guess I don't need to get into it, but yeah, I just feel like even the people I love and respect the most, most of them are just not. They'll never do anything that will actually make a difference. They'll never be willing to actually take action. I don't know. It's just depressing. It's depressing. One YouTuber said it. I think it was. I can't remember who it was. He said anything that's true isn't popular, and anything that's popular isn't true. And that's how I'm feeling more and more. But I guess at the end of the day, the only thing people I know want to do is they want to make podcasts and post stuff on Facebook about resisting and get epic dunks on the right wing. And I don't care about any of that. I just want to actually do something and help fix things or help console the suffering or help bringing them some sort of peace. And I don't know how to do that because um, everybody's either uncultured and stupid and a slave to media, or they are um, hostile to everything else I believe and value. And um, yeah, I just really sometimes when I feel like that, I just feel like, what's even the point? What's even the point of trying? So there's my rant about politics and everything going on right now with the new administration. Maybe it was coherent, maybe it wasn't. It was an hour long. I can't believe it. But that was somewhat therapeutic, and I feel like maybe I can go to sleep now. So, thanks for watching, I guess. Go to hell.